Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. This is where we like to gather together as writers and talk all sorts of things by writers and for one another. Such a good community of support. So we're really glad you're either here live or that you're watching the replay, because we got a great topic today. We're going to get the inside scoop and behind the scenes view and some real good knowledge, I think. So it's great seeing everybody today. And thank you for my co-hosts, Brandy and Johnny, for being with us. And we're missing Melissa, missing you, Melissa, if you watch this later. I'm going to turn it over to Johnny to introduce a special guest, which I think we all know, but let's hear it anew. So Johnny, take it away.
Okay, well, I am very excited to once again introduce my daughter, Bethany Jett. I think I just introduced her a couple of weeks ago when she was here talking about something else, but we're really excited to have her back so quickly because Bethany has just become a literary agent. And already, if you were here a couple of weeks ago, I was with her when I was in Virginia with her. And all of this was still really new, and she's very excited, and she's talking about different things, and she's already just dug in, and she's calling me with all this like fun information and stuff that she's finding out about, that she reads places. So it's just been really fun to see that excitement, and already had information that she wanted to share with us now that she's seeing it. She's been an author for quite a while, very involved in our writing community as far as putting together conferences, teaching at conferences, holding contests and judging contests. I mean, just in almost every aspect that you could want to be in, except writing fiction, which she leaves to me. But, devotionals, nonfiction, articles, all kinds of things. So she does have a wide, what do I want to say? A wide something of experience. My words are failing me like this. and now she's adding the literary agency to that as well. So welcome, Bethany. We're excited to have you with us.
Thank you. I know, I feel like I was just here, and it's so nice to be back too, but so much has changed just in the last couple of few weeks, I guess. Even being able to go to a conference as an agent for the first time at Speak Up was, you just see everything is in a different light because there's responsibility attached to it now. So I feel like I love to champion authors and dream with them, but before I could give that advice and tell them what I think that they should do, but that was it. I could just send them on their way and wish them the best. And now I feel like I have to be much more tempered in enthusiasm because I don't want anyone to think that this is going to mean like there's responsibilities attached to it now. So it's very different, but I am excited to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you here and just to talk about that different perspective, because we all know how important an agent can be to somebody's career, and especially the right agent. And I know now you're also thinking of it as the right client. And just to say this off the top, Bethany told me that someone asked her, "Oh, are you going to start representing your mom?" And she said, "Nope."
No. Why not? I'm curious. Let's give that insight.
Yeah,
I'll say
what you answered.
So right? my mom is represented by Tamla Hancock Murray with the Steve Lobby Agency, and they are just the perfect pair for each other. I mean, I really believe in having the right agent, and I have always thought that Tamla was the perfect agent for my mom. I was like, I will never, ever step into that. And I also don't represent fiction either. So like, that's kind of like, that's the fallback. But no, you want to be with the agent that's right for you and who loves and is invested in the genre that you write. And more importantly, has the connections to the genre that you write. And Tamla is wonderful at fiction and romance. She's so known for that too, because she has that credibility and connections that I love. Someone said Tamla is a sweetheart. She is. I just adore her. I hope I get to see her again soon. I know you do. She's perfect. You're perfect for each other, I think.
You are.
But I think finding the right agent is when you're unagented, it's very difficult because you want to find an agent so bad, you almost don't care. If somebody says, here, sign on the title, you're ready to jump in. So I think from an author point of view, we're blinded we're blinded by that because that's might be a goal to get it. Now you're on the agent side to see, because you can't pick and choose. A lot of us are friends. You can't pick and choose us if we're not right on that. So what have you learned about that?
That is the sticky part.
Yeah.
How do you, I don't know, it's the rejection thing is something I've been thinking a lot about. And I've talked on here so many times about integrated marketing. You guys probably hate the word. But like the first step of that is listening, and active listening, and it's such an important part. So I have honestly spent so much time over on Twitter because of the writing community over there. And almost every day I'm reading through the am querying hashtag. And that's where writers are, if they're in the process of pitching to agents, it's mostly to agents, they're talking about, the rejections, or looking for support, or encouraging each other, or complaining. It's just that space for them to be able to do all of those things. And so I've really been looking at what they're saying, and then trying to then find blog posts where people are talking about the rejections, and then reading the comments and just trying to figure out what is the right tone that should be set when sending. This isn't even where I wanted to go with this, but with the rejection letter. And then there's this one account that just shares rejection letters, and I don't tell who the agent is, but they'll share the bulk of it. And so many of it sounds very similar, but some of it sounds a little condescending. So I'm learning. I'm trying to do as much research on that side as possible.
I bet. Because you got a heart for this, and like you said, you have a heart for championing the writer, but now you have a new hat to put on.
Yes. And how do you tell somebody that you believe in their book and you think you could help them maybe get into maybe a small to mid press, but you don't think it's going to go to a big one? I mean, that's the sticky part.
Yeah, right. And then I think also, are you only representing the big ones? Let's ask that question. Or will you represent someone that might be a small press person?
Yeah, I am taking on both, but mostly looking for the office. And nobody wants to hear this, and I didn't either. But yeah, I am looking for the big platform authors, because the more of those you have, then you can take on a few of these smaller ones too from the business side. So they can balance themselves. But I'm also looking for people who are career authors, who I can say, okay, I'm willing to jump in on this book with you. Let's sell so well for this house and try to get a second deal out of it. Just because over the last 10 years, some of my friends, I've watched them start with me and then go on to be amazing in this industry. And I think I would have loved to have started with them as their agent back when. And so I know that there's those authors out there as well. Yeah,
and stuff. So talk, you had a couple ideas you wanted to start with. I'm sure you share with us. Let's start with that then. Then we could come back to questions.
Okay, so I thought that the first thing I'd talk about what's an agent's job. And we've talked about this before in here. So I just have a few points, and then a couple of things that an agent isn't, which I think is equally as important. But okay, so the first one is an agent shops is the industry word, basically submits your proposal to the acquisitions editors at different publishing houses. And so then the second part of that job is then I have to connect and maintain those relationships with those editors. So it is a little bit of a balancing act between making sure that I can act as an intermediary, which is the third part of the job, between my clients and the publishing house editor, and making sure my client's getting the best deal, which leads me to number 4, which is negotiating that contract on their behalf, while still maintaining a good relationship with the editors at those houses, because editors jump houses. So you might start at a small house, that editor may go on to a bigger house, and if you've worked well, they may pull you in. So that's another reason why I do want to look at some smaller authors if they have a lot of grit. And growth and engagement, those are my 3 words: grit, growth, and engagement. That's what I'm looking for, kind of for smaller house authors. But it is a little bit of a balancing act there too. So the relationship side is not just looking for the client, it's also now, especially at the beginning, making those connections with these editors at houses that I don't know. There's so many editors that I've never met at a conference, especially in the general market, which is where I want to spend some time. So it's just kind of paying your dues at the beginning a little bit, just, hoping that you don't want to bother them either. Kind of like we talk about, like with agents, like you don't want to just, if you're looking for an agent, don't just like constantly spam them asking to follow up. It's kind of the same thing. You have to temper how many times you interact with that editor at that house too, so they will open your emails. So it's interesting. It's just it's a kind of a whole different ball game.
Wow. What isn't an agent? I don't know if you covered that. What don't they do?
So an agent's not really your editor, although a lot of them, and myself included, will look over the proposals before they get sent. So I think sometimes people think like they can just create this proposal, send it in, and then you're just going to take whatever they have sent and you're just going to shop it around, but it has to meet a standard. And I've talked about, my agent is Cyle, and so he expects that proposal to be ready when you send it to him. And I am adopting a little bit of that himself, but he's also taking on people he knows can write proposals as well. So that is a little bit of it. That we're going to talk about queries in a minute. That proposal and query is really important to get right, because it, you know, the other thing is an agent, they're not at your beck and call, and they don't work on retainer. And I think sometimes people might have that, you know, I need my agent should answer my phone call or my email the second that I do. And the thing is, your clients are going to be that priority for you because you're usually working within contracts or negotiations, but your agent doesn't get paid until you do. And 15% of zero is zero. So it is a risk. And there's a lot of time spent in that pre-work before the publisher makes the decision on that contract, and you may never get one. And that is just time lost for both parties, really. And I think the really important thing is, which I'm kind of seeing on this side of things that I didn't really think about before, is that the agent does not make the decision. And I think a lot of agents, and I'm seeing this as I've been doing my active listening online, really researching this, a lot of people blame the agent when the book contract doesn't come in. And the thing is, what I want to do with people that I'm working with is kind of we want to dream big, but I also want to set the expectation for who is the decision maker in the different parts of this process. And we can get your proposal ready to go, and we're going to dream big and we're going to make it great. But once I send it, I will have the ability to touch back with that editor after a certain amount of time appropriately, but I don't make the decision at the publishing house. So if that contract doesn't go through, I mean, it's, you know, it's not, whose fault is it? Really, sometimes nobody's. Yeah. And as an author, that can be frustrating. I've been on this side of it. I've gotten rejected a lot for my own books. But so it's interesting just on this side of it to really think about what can I do and when do I come into play on the contract? There's this middle piece of it when it's at the publishing house that's not really, that I don't have control over.
Right. Pam asked a good question. Is when you first start out as a new agent, are you introduced to these publishing housing? What kind of, how do you've shifted a role here for these publishers? How does that start even?
So I've been doing a lot of research with Publishers Marketplace, and I got an account there as an agent. So I'm able to see, and I think anyone can do this really if you pay for it, but you're able to see the deals that are coming out. So I'm paying attention to which editors are looking for or acquiring, actually, that's what they're doing. They're sharing the deals, acquiring books in the genres and subgenres that I'm going to represent, and then introducing myself via email, which may or may not get opened. Again, I don't make that decision if they open my email, but starting to make some introduction emails. And I mean, I've gone to so many conferences over the last few years, several years, I guess, that I know I'm friends with several editors on the Christian side. So it's really some of the editors at some of the bigger houses who may not come to conferences that now I'm introducing myself to, and then a lot in the general market.
Okay. That's really neat. Really neat on that. Elaine just said, I think it's awesome that you're in this agent role after being in an author role. You know, you have a lot of insight to that. So you want to kind of reflect on that a little bit?
It is so exciting, and it feels like a natural next step. And I'm so new still at it, and there's not really like I was telling my mom, there's not really like a school to follow. You just like, you know, thankfully Kyle's been in for several years now, but he's sold, I think he said within his agency, over 400 books have been sold to small houses, but he's also with all of the big five. And so he's been training and teaching, and I'm asking a lot of questions, and that's been really great. So I feel like I've, you know how you go to a conference and you feel like you've drink from a fire hose? That's kind of what it feels like, but it's so fun to be on this side of it. And I'm hoping that the author side is going to help, like on the author relations side as well, and help me kind of figure out which clients are the ones that I'm going to be best to work with.
Right. You know, when in my denomination, when a minister who has lots of experience, becomes a bishop, which is a new role. They call it baby bishop school. You know, they do have a 3-day conference where they get all the baby bishops together to kind of orient them, get them all that, so that we need to have a baby agent.
Yes.
I know.
He's Kyle to start one.
I know. He's been great to answer questions, and he's got a few of us who are new coming in. They've kind of grown up together as authors, but Dill Didway, he's slowed down quite a bit, but he's still agenting. I don't think he's open to submissions right now. But Andy Clapp, who many of you know, he is really taking on and spearheading fiction, which has been great, and he's doing well. And then we have a new agent too, Antoine Hauser, who's a friend of mine, and he wrote the foreword for Navigating Minefields, and I'm excited to be working with him too. So it's been good. So we're all kind of bouncing things off of each other. And you know, when we always said people talk within the industry, it's so true.
It is a small industry, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's always changing. How do you stay up to date with all these changes?
So the Publishers Marketplace has been an amazing resource. So I can go in whenever I want and look at things, and I do. But last night, I think I was in there for an hour just looking through the week. They send out, I chose to get it in a weekly digest. And so I was just going through looking at the different, it's broken up by genre, and it tells you the author, like a synopsis, like a very tiny blurb about the book, and then what kind of deal it was, when it's going to release, and then the agent and then the editor involved. And sometimes it'll tell you how much it's sold for, but they break it into very big thing. So like there's 5 different categories for that, ranging from 0 to over 500,000 for the advance.
Wow.
And so sometimes that information will be in there, not the amount of it, but which category it falls into. So I've been making note of that as well. Who the editors are, not so much the agents, because I'm not checking on other people, but which editors, which houses are acquiring this. And then as I'm doing that, I'm thinking about, I've already got several clients, and so I'm thinking about their books. And, you know, if an editor at this house has just acquired a book too similar, they're not going to work for my client when we start sending their proposal. But maybe it's close, but not enough. And so maybe the next year they're going to want to follow up to that book. So I'm making notes of those things. And there's a lot of books I want to read. So I started a list of books to read, and I'm marking down when they're going to come out. There's some pretty great books that we'll be releasing in the next couple of years.
That's super. That's exciting. The inside scoop.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm that way. Johnny, Randy, guys, kind of a question. I'm doing all the talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. To talk about, because I know that you talked about knowing editors at publishing houses in the inspirational market, but I also know that you're very interested in doing general market books as well. And, we know you don't do fiction. What are the broad categories of books that you're looking for and that you're not looking for? I think sometimes it's easier to say what you don't want than what you do want, right? Like, what do you want for supper? I don't want Burger King. I don't want Taco Bell. Well, what do you want? I don't know, but I don't want this.
I know what I don't want. No, it's true. So I am looking primarily for nonfiction for both markets, really. And that covers a lot. That covers, the inspirational, the gift category, the trade. I'm not really looking for memoir unless it's someone with a lot of platform, because that's, as I'm looking through the ones that are coming out, a lot of them, they do call them memoir, but there's also a narrative nonfiction category that's really based on the story of someone who's done something. So I don't know what differentiates it between the biography. That's something I'm going to look into, because it has its own category, but it seems so biographical to me. So I'm going to look, and maybe because they're live, I don't know. So those are going to depend. I'm not as interested in those cookbooks. I love Brunch with Babs, and she's got that cookbook, and there's all these TikTok influencers that I just am amazed by, and I always think they'd be amazing to have a cookbook. So if that ever happened, I'd be so excited about doing that with them. So, and a lot of general market books. So not almost all of the nonfiction is kind of what I'm looking for. And then on the YA and middle grade, I am looking for fiction there, but not as much. So I have my main emphasis is nonfiction. I will be very strict on the YA and middle grade, because I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people don't read in that genre and they don't know the books that have come out or the reader's choice books. I don't think they do the research on it. And then they think they can just write it because it's younger age. And so for YA, I'm looking for extremely deep POV and kind of balancing the clean versus the crazy, which is what happens in the general market a lot with the YA. There's just, it can go very dark or too much for me. So I'm kind of looking for like that balance, kind of like Kiera Cass, I think is what I have on my list. So again, if you read a lot of YA, you might be familiar with Kiera Cass has the Selection series, which I absolutely adore, looking for books like hers in the YA category. Middle grade, like Victoria Schwab. And then children's, I am representing it to an extent, mostly because a lot of the nonfiction authors will have great children's nonfiction picture book ideas. And so I'm kind of looking at that through the lens of my clients, unless I see one that I think would be perfect for the market right now. So my big thing is nonfiction for all ages, and then fiction, YA and middle grade, and children's, but very slim. Very slim, very teeny tiny. Oh, because I told my mom, so a deal just came out for this woman, fiction. It looks like it may be one of her first books. It looks like she's got a couple that are coming out. Hardly any platform at all, but it earned a major deal, which is at least $500,000 or more for 2 books. And it does sound amazing. So I was like, wow, that's incredible. Not many of those deals do I see, but this one was, and it was YA.
Wow. Something must be very special about the story or the writing. Go ahead, Brandy. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. I was wondering, are you willing to entertain an author that writes both nonfiction and fiction?
Right. So yes, like if they're coming in with like multiple things.
But I mean, like not necessarily children's fiction, but
adult
fiction for
fiction.
adults. Yeah.
It would kind of depend, like if they are coming, and then there's exceptions to all of this. So if someone's coming in with nonfiction, but they've got a novel that they would want me to shop as well,
right,
then that's one thing. If they're coming in with a novel as the priority, I might pass it on to Andy because he's making the connections with the fiction editors right now, and I'm not, which I will be. But I also really want to dig into that nonfiction category.
Yeah. You want to focus on what you do. You talk about what you're looking for, but what are you looking for in the author?
Oh, good question.
Yes. Okay. So on my submissions page on my website, I have I call them the 3 G's, even though they don't all start with G, but I'm looking for like grit, growth, and engagement. So you can be a micro influencer, but get a lot of engagement on social media. Editors are looking for that as well. And I think there's a place for all of us, some at small, medium, and then bigger houses. I don't think everyone needs to go to the big 5 right away, especially if you're at the start of your career. But I am looking for people who are going to kind of do a lot of things like they understand the industry to the point if I'm getting the query and the proposal, it'll be very easy to then transfer that proposal into my format that I'm going to send out. So there's not going to be a lot of back work for them. They understand my role and they also understand their role, which means they're not going to be needy. Like, I was joking to my mom. I'm like, if I ever get a client where they're like always like just like going at me like this, like that would be a reason I would cancel a contract probably, because it's not worth it to me to have that kind of just person like always like following up with me. Like I will let you know where things go. So I think having like an understanding of how the process works is going to be important to me. But someone who's also motivated, like, and I will say that on this side of it, a lot of times if an agent or an editor really asks you to do something where they give a suggestion on marketing or they give a suggestion for something else, they are watching to see if you do it prior to the contract, because that's a good indication of what you'll do as a client. And I'm really looking for that. Like if I believe that you actually can get this done, I mean, if you can hustle, I'm in to an extent, obviously, because there's a lot that weighs.
Yeah, talk about a little bit about those 3 G's a little bit more. What do you mean by grit? What would grit look like in an author that would say, "Ooh, she's got grit"?
Okay, so there's a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. And there were 2 books that kind of changed my life when I was thinking about, I was already an author and I was really getting into ghostwriting with the other agency that I was at before I signed with Cyle. And because I'd already done the 2 ghostwriting books and I was interviewing for a lot of others. And I read How the World Sees You by Sally Hogshead. Yeah. And she is the leader in her space and incredible. And I was jealous of what she knew. And I was kind of going through that. And then I immediately read the first 2 to 3 chapters of Grit, didn't even finish the book. And that's when I decided to go back to school and get a degree in the marketing and PR. So I don't know the whole book of Grit, but I know the first few chapters of it. And but she talks about how, I think she was studying West Point cadets. And it wasn't, because they're all so great when they come in, but it wasn't the ones that had the best scores or what you would normally look at in terms of success achievement. They're not always the ones that finished or the ones that passed the hard things. It was the ones that had the grit. And she goes in to define what that is, but this internal thing. So I've always stuck with me. And I thought that's it, because you don't have to be the best or the smartest, but you can get more accomplished if you kind of have that internal something.
Yeah, I've heard like the best writers are the ones that keep showing up every day.
Yeah.
Over the years, those are the ones that long run. That's sort of what you mean, that long-term stuff.
Oh, can I just interject something here really quick? Is if you sign up for that master class, is that what it's called, BethanyMasterclass.com or?
Oh, I love Masterclass.
Yeah, and they have a lot of, well-known people in there doing classes, including Dan Brown, who wrote the Da Vinci Code, and David Baldacci, who, is, of course, famous for his thrillers. And Ron Howard's on there, a lot of actors. Helen Mirren does a class. I mean, it's music, just all kinds of people. And they're very, very fascinating to listen to. And I will tell you, I mean, David Baldacci and Dan Brown talking about their just drive to write this book, getting up at all hours. Dan Brown talks about writing at an ironing board in his mom's laundry room. Wow. And then again, writing at this warehouse. He had this milk carton and his laptop is on the milk carton and he's bent over it typing. So it's not like these guys, I mean, now of course they're successful. They have beautiful offices, and all, but it didn't start out that way. And and I think that's because I'm thinking, you know what? That would never be me. I would not type it, and that's grit, right? I mean, that is really going for it. So of course they deserve the rewards of that.
I agree. I know. I love that. I think hustle is a word we talk a lot about that is similar. It's kind of like faded a little bit as people kind of go into, I think we had this season where it was like hustle all the time. I know I did anyway, burn the candle at both ends. And I don't really regret that so much because it taught me my boundaries. And I think people don't ever push themselves to that point to figure out where that boundary is, because then you know how to step back because you know where the values are. So then that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I think it's super important. And I'll say that is the thing that impresses me so much. I mean, I met a lady at Speak Up. We got a quick appointment. She already had a deal with an editor, but she was sharing with me that it was based on her marketing section. And it wasn't a huge platform, but she had listened to some of the classes we had talked about. And I think Kyle and Victoria Duerstock, who's with In-Game Press, before In-Game Press was In-Game Press, they had gone and met people she was speaking at his church, and so they had gone to the different boutique bookstores around the area to let them know that she was going to be there, and like something to do in your local areas to find different coffee shops or bookstores or gift shops that may carry your book. Well, this woman had done that. She's like, well, I just did what you guys told me to. And I thought, you'd be surprised, I don't even do what I tell people to do sometimes. But she had a list of 10 to 12 local stores where she had met the owner. I think only 2 told her no. And the rest of them were excited about the possibility of having the book there. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. I understand exactly why they said yes to you, because you've given them an arm of distribution and a connection that could then lead to bigger things. And I was so impressed with her. And if she didn't already have a book deal, I would have signed her on the spot, just because she just did it. She was just like, okay, I need to do this. This is what I'll do. And I loved that. And that's the kind of thing that I look for too.
That's what you're looking for. That's really key.
Yeah.
What about growth? You want to reflect on growth a little bit?
Yeah. So I am so proud of Melanie Redd. I think I've talked about her to everyone that will listen to me. If you don't know Melanie, she's an author with In-Game Press, and she's got a book. It's a devotional journal called Just Rest, and it's just releasing, or it just released. I can't wait to get my copy. But we did some marketing strategy with her for In-Game before the book came out, about 8 to 9 months before the book released. And again, it's that same thing. She went back and did the things we suggested. I mean, it was nothing magical. We suggested doing reels, So she did. And I think I've talked about her on here. And I have watched her account explode. It's grown so much, but it's people who are interested in what she's talking about, which is this concept of rest. It's very inspirational. She's very mild mannered. I mean, so it's not even someone, I mean, you see a lot of people have followers who are just so, extroverted and outgoing.
Yeah.
She's not that, but she was just being herself and sharing the message on the platform with no book in hand, because the book was under contract and being edited. So I think when people say, I don't have a book yet, I can't do a website, I can't talk about it. That's not for me. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who, like Melanie, she did have a book contract in hand, but that's when the pressure's on more, because now you have to build that audience in a certain time frame. But she has. And so I always encourage people to go to her Instagram and just look at what she's done, scroll back as far as you can. And eventually you'll see the spot where her feed starts to change, which is always my favorite part of the process, is where you can start seeing these changes where things get added, or there's a different background, or there's a logo. I love all that. And so she's done amazing. So that kind of growth too is
what was her name again? Melanie what?
Redd, Redd.
Okay, in case somebody
adore
wants
her.
Up on Instagram, Melanie Redd.
I think
okay.
She may be doing it over on TikTok too, probably, because it's the same video. She can put it on both places. And so she's been growing a very engaged audience of people who like this kind of books. I wouldn't be surprised if she had another one come out.
That's interesting that we've gone from hustle to rest, though. I mean, even just talking about your examples, it went from like we were in that hustle culture, like you said, and now it's like people got burned out, and now it's like, woo, I need to rest.
That is. We
So
did that we pivoted pretty quickly with it. Pam made an observation too in the chat that she said, I've heard authors say that they should interview a potential agent so they can understand how that agent works. And see, we're getting some insight with you, but what kind of question should we ask? What would you think?
I think talking to other people who've worked with them is probably a really good way to do some research, because you're going to get sort of a no holds barred. I will say that on this side of it, I wouldn't mind answering some questions, and I think that they will come. So I'm working on a, like a PDF, like, are we the right fit, kind of what I'm looking for. Because if someone were to like start sending me a bunch of questions, I would probably just be done, because I don't have to interview. I don't have to try out for you. Like, if you want to work with me, that's great. But I have a lot of submissions in my inbox. So, best of luck.
Yeah.
That sounds so mean, but I don't mean it that way.
No,
but I'm not every agent might be that way, but I think I've got a lot of videos and stuff online. It'd be very easy to find out about me, or even to kind of think we'd be a good fit just from watching videos that I've done online for free. I've got a lot of that stuff out there. And there's a lot of people that you could talk to as well. And I wouldn't mind answering questions specifically when it comes to the process, but I am working on a PDF, so I don't have to be answering those questions. I would expect the author to come, if they're submitting, they've already done the research. That's kind of my expectation, I guess.
That's a good
if you're
point.
submitting, you've already done that research.
Well, Pam has clarified a little bit. She said she was thinking the interview would be if the agent was interested in the author, things like, how do you like to keep in touch, how often, those kinds of things. But Elaine also commented that she once walked away from an agent because she didn't see a fit, and has had no regrets from that. So you might talk about both those kinds of things. But yeah, is any agent better than no agent or not?
I think and I've said this before on the author side of things. So I feel like I'm being consistent on both ends, but I really think the right agent is the best thing. A wrong agent is, how did I say it before? It's better to have no agent than have the wrong agent. I believe that. And the other thing too, and again, I'm not trying to be, however it may have come across, but you don't need an agent to publish your book. So no one is stopping you from writing a book, and no one is stopping you from publishing a book. Yeah. Those options are so available now, and so many different ways to do them. And so I think then when an agent is involved, it's because you're specifically trying to get with a traditional publisher, and the agent has the connections that you need. So I really see it as a partnership in that aspect of it, because like you'll see some submission queries come in, and it's like, I remember, I don't say anything back rude or anything, but I think you don't need me and you can just go do this on your own, apparently. So like there's sometimes people come with this expectation of, you know, any agent would be so lucky to have them. Well, good luck and go self-publish your book and I wish you well. Like, or find an agent who likes to work with that personality type, but it isn't me.
Right. It still comes back to do your homework, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, do your homework on that way. You know, you mentioned queries and proposals. Do you want to dive into that a little bit too? Because I know that was a topic you really wanted to cover today.
It is. Okay, so some things, because that query is your first impression in the inbox. And so a well done query just sets you above, and literally it's just doing the things that you're taught to do at every conference. They will tell you, and there's so many blog posts about how to do this right. So here's just a few things that I'm going to suggest based on the things I have seen in my inbox. And I will say that things like when you hear like the don't do this, it's because people do them. And I have seen some queries, it just felt like a joke. It was absolutely the negative of everything that is taught. So like if you had 10 things, they did the opposite of each one. And I really sat there thinking, is this real? Was this a real query? So here's things to do so that you can get the agent to then open the proposal, which is what you want. And now that's my process. And I know you're going to have some more agents on here, and they all have different processes. So this is just me coming in new and fresh faced and maybe wrong. So the query, put the name of the agent. I mean, I know we've talked about that before, but it is important because a lot of people do this, what they call a shotgun blast. And they will send the same query to every agent that's listed wherever they found them. And that's just like an immediate no. Right. So even just putting the name, I mean, I don't know. It's just something, it just says, okay, I want to look at this a little bit further because so many people don't. It's just a generic query that you've already set yourself up to have the
well, think about this. I mean, like if you have somebody that sends a generic query, what person is going to want to work with that writer because they're not willing to do the individual work to actually get their writing with the right person? If they're just like shortcutting it, why would anybody want to pick them up?
Mm-hmm. That's true. It does everything in this query process. I think in my notes I called it's a dance, and you're testing to see if you're going to be a good fit on the author's side and the agent's side. So you're wanting to make sure it's gonna be a good fit for both of you. So it's a dance. So you don't want to make a wrong move that could have been avoided, really. Any personalized info. So if you've met an agent at a conference, anything that kind of gives them a reminder of who you are, do that because that also helps. Then the manuscript details, just kind of then jumping into what the book is and not burying it, because there's some that come in and it's a lot of information about themselves in the beginning. But I don't even know if you're submitting a query to a book I represent or want to at that point. So just letting them know what the book is, the genre, a little bit about it. That's super important. And then in that second paragraph, or depending on if you're doing 2 paragraphs, that first one would be personalized information. Here's some information about the book. If you're going into a second paragraph, then a little bit more about you, and then sharing the marketing a little bit. What is something notable, or what's going to set you apart from everyone else in that submissions inbox? And then my bonus tip would include a website link in the footer, like in your signature line, because if I don't open the proposal, I might jump over to your website first, depending, especially for nonfiction, because we're looking, platform is so important. Because again, you can publish your book any way that you want to, but I can't submit here. And here's really the thing that I think I feel the deepest. I cannot submit a proposal. I won't, let's put it that way. I won't submit a proposal for someone that has a platform that might sell 2,000 copies of a book to an editor at a house where they need 15 to 20,000 in that first print run. Because that editor is going to stop opening my emails. And it also shows that I don't understand the industry. So then the tricky part as the agent comes to when you have an author who's dreaming big for the big houses and you want that for them, but I can't send that out to that house. I need to go small to medium. So that's kind of the emotional side of it for me, is navigating those waters of it. So being able to go to your website and check out your social media is something I've done for a few of them before I've opened the proposal, to be honest. It's Arlene. I won't submit so if at a publishing house, if I know that they need like 15 to 20,000 copies sold in that first print run, at a minimum, it is unfair for me to send proposals of an author who really should be at a small house where they're only probably going to be able to sell 1,000 to 2,000, hopefully 5,000 of that book based on the numbers that they're showing in the proposal. It's unfair then, I think, on a couple ends. I don't want to get their hopes up either for it, but then I also need to maintain a relationship with that editor at that house, and so that they know that I know what I'm doing, because I've wasted their time in essence. And so I could send it out. I will send proposals out as high as I think I can get them in without showing incompetence, if that makes sense. I'm being really honest on this recording right now. Well, a lot of publishers do. I mean, if you think about it, just this week, like I said, the novel, that 2-book deal, it's at a minimum of $500,000, this deal, according to Publishers Marketplace. So they're going to do a big print run. They're going to make that money back. James Patterson, huge
a
print
lot
run.
of in marketing too, probably. So that,
yeah, there's some pretty big deal books coming out, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, going back to proposals, well, let me do this first. I was thinking, there have been different, we love agent panels at conferences, and I've heard someone say this, I'm not sure who, that, and it might have been you or Cyle, that some agents look at the chapter or sample chapters first, because if the writing's not what they want, that's why bother the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Others look at, the marketing, the platform, because if the platform's not there, and then, if it's kind of there, then they might go to the writing. I know marketing is so important to you in that platform, and all has been for a long, long time. So it was interesting to say that is what, that you're looking at numbers maybe before you even do check out the writing skill of the person.
My strategy, and again, it's only been a few weeks, but
it could change, right?
It could, but I, like I said, I've signed some clients with some amazing projects and a range of platform. And so I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of active listening. I feel like that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now, as I'm waiting for those proposals to be finished and sent to me to be able to shop. And so, well, I could share where I look at a proposal first, if that's helpful.
Okay.
I always enjoy those panels too. So I am doing it a little bit differently for fiction and for nonfiction. So the marketing does matter, because that determines which publisher I can send it to. Right. And I know there are some publishers that I've been in touch with, so I know kind of what they're looking for, and I also know what type of platform that they need. And so if I get a query in that sounds promising, I need to know, is this somebody that I can then send? I'm trying to network for them, for this potential client. Do I have a house in mind that I think this would be great for, or not? So that's actually something that I'm trying to always keep in the back of my head, like what the needs of these publishing houses are as well. So for nonfiction, platform matters to make sure you get into the right house. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always have to be big, but it would need to fit into the house that would be looking for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we get past the query process, and I'm going into the proposal, which should be attach the proposal as a PDF or a Word document, whichever one that you want, because that's the next step. Like, okay, I'm interested enough in this query, I'm going to open the proposal now. So at the beginning, I like the overview, so I can kind of get a taste for nonfiction of what it is. If you do a hook, that's fine too, like a 1-sentence pitch line, you could add that as well. I should already know the manuscript details, because it should be in your query. This is nonfiction, but there's so many subgenres of nonfiction. So what exactly am I looking at here? And then I go to the marketing, because I need to know what kind of house this would be good for. And I'm probably already interested in the storyline of it, because I've opened the query and you've told me. So that part has already kind of been checked off for me. And then I also look at the comps. The comps are really important to me, because I need to know, I look at the dates. I've been teaching this for so long. I don't know that every agent does this, but they should be within the last couple of years, and 2, 3, maybe 4 because of COVID, maybe. But if they're all outdated, that would be, my interest would start to wane, because it looks to me like you don't know your market at that point. And then I go into the sample chapters, because here's the thing with nonfiction is that you can get an editor, God bless the editors, or you can get a ghostwriter. So if the platform that is high enough, then a ghostwriter could come in to help on the writing side for nonfiction, if it's a book that we think is sellable. So that is part of that on the nonfiction. For fiction, it's opposite. Again, the story has to hook you in the query, but again, going to the chapters, just like I said, this lady who just got this huge deal, she's got less than 500 followers on Twitter and Instagram. I went and looked. But her writing, they loved it. They love the story. And that's what it is for fiction, because you can lean in on the marketing to the fandom. And so for the very small amount of fiction that I will be acquiring in YA, I'm looking for extremely deep POV, super deep. And within the first few pages, as you know, because we've done so many critiques, you pretty much know from the very first page or two. So there will be no reason to look at anything else until you've checked the writing on the novel, because marketing is only going to help. If that makes sense. Did that make sense?
Yes, it made sense to me. Yeah, I think so. It's just such an interesting process. And of course, not all agents are going to do it the same way.
No.
Which means that, every aspect of your proposal, because you don't assume they're going to start at the beginning and go through. They could very well be flipping through. And we've talked about this before too, that this proposal is taken to the pub board. The agent or prospective agent is not the only person who's going to see it. And it's a sales document. And the marketing people are going to be looking at certain things. The other editors might be looking at the writing more than the marketing stuff. The sales people are going to be looking at things. So, you don't know who's going to be flipping through to what. It's doubtful anyone's going to read it from beginning to end, I would imagine. Yeah, they've got too many to do. So anything else before we bring people back on to see if anyone has questions they want to ask?
Well, I wanted to ask Bethany to talk a little bit about what authors should expect from an agent-author relationship, because you did mention that briefly, and I think sometimes authors don't know how much should they contact their agent. Sometimes they just don't know, and they need a little bit of guidance along the process, especially if there is a book that's sold. But then they have a lot of questions. So how much contact should they have? What is that process?
So when I was working with clients before agenting, I did a lot of work through Platinum Literary with proposals for clients. And one thing we would talk about is, I call it bursts and spurts, which is really hard to say, but that's the way I think, bursts and spurts. And so there's these times of, we're going to talk a lot, and there's these stretches of silence, and then we'll be talking again, and then there'll be other stretches of silence, which is, again, something that I want to put in my document. Like, here's the roadmap for my clients, and then I'm going to have what to expect before you query, so that you kind of know if we're good to work together. And so I think in the beginning, it's a little bit of a burst. So if you're interested, there's probably going to be maybe a phone call follow-up, and kind of like asking any other questions, getting the proposal, signing it, and then waiting for that proposal to come back, ready for me to do my look through. So there's going to be some engagement there, getting that proposal done and ready to be shopped. Once it's shopped, it's kind of a stretch of silence, because we're just waiting now. It's the waiting game. And so I expect the author to be doing marketing at this point and building that platform like Melanie did, and sharing the information that's in the book and building that readership, especially for nonfiction, mostly because that's what I'm looking for right now. And then for fiction, obviously, I would expect the book to be done. So there's other marketing and things to be doing to lean into the fandom, which will only help the sales. But and then once the contract offer comes in, then it's another, okay, we're going to be in contact a lot. We need to go through the contract. I need you to understand it. Now we're in negotiations. And then once that is over for nonfiction, typically, usually the author's writing the book at that point to meet their deadline. So I'm also looking for people who are going to meet deadlines. So that makes me look bad. If I have to go back and keep asking for deadlines, the publisher may not want another book with you. So this is all this kind of dance we're doing at the beginning to see if, when I now have you in front of my editor contacts, how you're going to behave and knowing that you understand those rules. But then we'll be in contact a lot, because a lot of those questions will come through me then to the editor, because your job as an author is to have a happy relationship with that editor. And so then I kind of get to be that person working in the middle. So again, it's why that client relationship is important, because you want to make sure you're not dealing with troublemakers, because there are some. And and then, hey, book and it's released, and your marketing, if you've got questions, we can always set up an appointment and time to call. So it's just, there's stretches of silence. The thing is, like, I think what a lot of authors may do, and I don't know, because I haven't hit this point yet, is that they haven't heard back in a while, but publishing can take a long time. It can take a very long time to get an answer back from a publisher. And the only real nudge that I can do with some, depending on the relationship I have with them, I can nudge earlier or for nothing, but probably not. But if you can do something notable, like a high increase or something's gone viral or you've gotten published somewhere big, that gives me a reason then to go back. Hey, I know that I sent you this. Guess what? This is what's just happened for my author. Just wondered if you've seen it yet. So I look for authors to have that grit that gives me a reason then to be able to nudge editors at some point if needed, because it can take a long time.
I think some authors have this picture in their head of the author-agent relationship based upon movies.
Yes.
Where they've
Yeah.
seen this, and that's like so unrealistic, but authors don't know that. They just think, my agent is like my personal go-to, and you have this agent calling the writer and the writer calling the agent, and like they're buddies and best friends, and that's really not the way it is it?
I would hope to be friends with my authors. I mean, I've got a great relationship with Cyle, partially because we do business together in other terms. But I will say, even on the author side, I talk to him maybe 5% of the time as a client, and I always preface it. So, because I never want him to feel like I'm just taking advantage of the business side of our relationship, like with Serious Writer and now this. So I always say, I have an agent question. I have a client agent question. Do you have a couple of minutes, or do you want me to schedule it? So even with the relationship that I have with him, I still try to do that, because I know that it's a different hat for him to put on, in those times. And I don't know how he feels about that, but I want him to know that I respect his time when we're talking about contracts or proposals or something too. So yeah, it is super important, I think. I lost my train of thought there for a second. So I don't know. I think I may not have answered the question.
It is.
No, it was just the movie idea of the author-agent relationship,
Justin and I are watching one of those like little rom-coms, like we love the cozy mysteries and like the cheesy like love story movies, and I love that he'll watch them with me because we kind of watch them together and make fun of them. But one of them was an agent who was doing this cookbook thing, and I was sort of like going off. I'm like, that would never happen, and she couldn't represent that, and she thought his edit. I'm like, it was so unrealistic, but nobody would know that I did. Right. He got tired of listening to me kind of go off every time the agent in the movie would say something. I'm like, that is not her job. You have no control over that at all.
Then you're sitting there going, bad writing.
Oh man, I gotta find the name of that movie. It was so cute, but I was so annoyed.
I think it was interesting what you said too, and I can just put this in a little bit about being, you want to have a happy relationship with your publisher. So the agent becomes that go-between mediator. So like, if you don't like the cover of your new book, you don't yell at the publisher. You cry to the agent, and the agent will cry, will not yell, but and I've only had that happen once, but it was interesting because it came out and I didn't respond right away, and because I knew I didn't like it. But I was trying to figure out why I didn't like it, and actually I got an email from Tamla saying, is there something wrong with the cover? I mean, it was, I guess, because I hadn't responded very enthusiastically like I usually do. And I said, yeah, but I'm still thinking about why I don't like it. So we talked about it, and I think she called me and we talked about it, and she wrote a wonderful email to the publisher, just expressing it in a way I couldn't have. It was so kind, so friendly, so diplomatic. And she was on my side, and I didn't have to deal with it at all, really. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's just a good thing to have that kind of relationship.
Now I'm curious, did the cover change?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sure did.
Yeah. Kyle's done the same, for us. And it is every situation is this balance of, you're also building this relationship with the editor. So empowering the author, which is what he did, he empowered us to respond. He's letting him know everything that's going on. Yes, go ahead and respond, see what happens. It's kind of like a chess game, thinking 4 moves ahead. But then at some point, he stepped in, because it was like, okay, we've gone as far as we feel like we can go with this. We're not getting what we need. And then that's when kind of same situation.
Yeah.
Steps in, and then things either move or don't move. But then, because in a way, I think your editor can talk to your agent in a different way that they can talk
Yes.
to you
Yeah.
as the author. And so I feel like there's so much more emphasis on the relationship your agent has with those publishing house editors than I expected, because I'm seeing how important it's going to be for me to make really great, strong connections with them and to keep those connections thriving as we work through the business side. So there is all this about the dreaming that can get done, but it also needs to be tempered with the realistic expectations of what can happen. And I think that's when things can really move forward, is when you trust your agent to be working on your behalf, even if things don't always go the way you want them to, which in my own career has happened. So, I think that's really important.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're getting really, really close. And Jeannie wanted to send apologies. All of a sudden her power went out and she disappeared and she feels really bad. But anyway, there's nothing that can be done. Yeah, we love you, Jean. So if you all want to come on, if we put anybody in jail, let us know and we'll free you. And any last questions for Bethany? Is there a book about finding an agent, sending proposals, queries that you can recommend? This is Leslie. I've read a few, but is there a good one for learning the process? And then also someone asked about if you had your own agenting website yet, or where they could find out more. So two questions there.
Yeah. So the place to start, and thank you, Pam, is is cyleyoung.com/literary-agent/my-team, and it's in the chat. So that's where all of the agents are listed. And Antoine will be there as well this week. And then I have underneath my area, because I didn't want it to be too long. It's already kind of longer than most everyone's on there. I also have a page on my website too for more information. So this is kind of way that I'm kind of looking at people too. Like, are they even going to find the submissions page on my website? Because I have it linked for more information from Kyle's. They can learn more over on mine, which really kind of goes more into detail than about what I'm looking for, how to submit, and all those kinds of things, because it needed its own page. So, and then as far as the book, there's so many books out there. Jim McGregor has a great book out on proposals. I bought it and read through it and, applied some of those things several years ago to my own proposals. And there's just so much. Just find one from someone who's been in the industry. That is what I would say. And then also see where they're coming from. Is it an agent perspective, a traditional publishing house perspective, a hybrid publisher perspective? Because the things will differ, and there's exceptions to everything. Literally everything. Oh, thanks, Sally. She said my office looks fabulous.
Well, Cyle Young is spelled with a C, and I was surprised because seeing it, I would have pronounced it Cyle. So
that's how he always knows if people have done research or not, because they'll spell his name with a K
right.
instead of a C, or it'll autocorrect a cycle. So that's fun. Dear Cycle.
When my power goes out, I have a Zoom app on my phone that can run on battery power.
Mom, you're muted.
Just sorry that happened to Jeannie, but hopefully she'll be with us next week. Anyone else have any last questions? All right, Brandy, you want to tell us about next week? Real exciting.
Oh, yeah. You didn't warn me ahead of time. I don't have all this stuff, so I don't know what next week is yet.
I will tell you, and then you can tell us more about it. It's Hope Clark will be coming back with us.
Oh, okay. She's going to be talking about crowdfunding. So that's going to be a really good thing, because I think a lot of writers don't think about doing crowdfunding for their projects. So it will be interesting to see what she says about that and how to do it. So I'm really excited to have her back.
Yeah, she was a great guest when we had her before, with a lot of wonderful information about grants and all that thing. So, all those contests and all kinds of stuff. So it'll be fun to have her back to do the crowdfunding too. Yep. All right. All right. I guess then we will close down. Join us for the after party. If you're watching the replay, we do invite you to join us live, because That way you do get to hear what we talk about before we start recording and after we stop the recording. And sometimes that can be just little fun nuggets of information. And
Plus all the notes in the chats.
yes, that's right.
We can put a lot of information in the chats.
Yeah, there's information there too. And we invite you to watch the videos on our Writers Chat Facebook page, to join our Writers Chat Facebook group, and just join us whenever you can. Tuesday mornings, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central is when we get together. Bethany, sweetie, thank you for joining us again so soon. We just wish you the best on this new venture. It is, to me, just seems like such a natural next step for you with all the connections you've made and how much you always have loved putting people together. I know you've been at conferences where you have met with somebody and said, go see that agent or go see that publisher right now. And you've been able to really have a legitimate, honest, to somebody's career, that you've been the person that has just given someone a boost that they might not have had otherwise. And now to see you take this role is just, I'm proud, mama. All right. So we'll see you all next week. Stay around for the after party. Bye-bye.